good evening on one coast and afternoon on the other, and everything in between. Tonight, first of all, I'm Rabbi Devorah Lynn, and I'm the co-chair of Jewish Earth Alliance, and I want to welcome you all, those of you who are here for the first time. It's terrific to see you, and those whose faces are familiar, it's great to see you again. Good to see you again. And I want to thank Ed Kopp for holding the tech space for us as usual. So thank you very much, Ed. So tonight I'm really honored to be the one to give a few words of Torah. I was a little bit hesitant to call up my rabbinic colleagues right before the holidays because they're always so busy. So I thought I would do the honors. And then we're going to catch up on a bit of Jewish Earth Alliance news and introduce our speaker. So there'll be time for questions and answers after he speaks. So write them down or put them in the chat, and we'll get to them after his opening comments. So take a big deep breath and a sigh. It's been a very exciting month. Lots of roller coaster, ups and downs. And we had a very busy month, Jewish Earth Alliance. We showed up at a rally on Capitol Hill with People versus the Fossil Fuels against the side deal between Schumer and Manchin, driving through a dangerous permitting reform bill that could result in rapid build out of polluting fossil fuels. And then we also sponsored a webinar with Tikkun Hayam and Higher Ground in Florida and Oceania on stopping offshore drilling, which, as you all know, was part of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. And we sent and made comments to the Bureau of Ocean Management against further leases. And that is one of our action alerts on our website. So if you would, well, we would love it if you would comment to the Bureau of Ocean Management about the stopping the leases, the offshore leases. And that is described on our website. And Mirla and I tabled at, we had a table at Washington Hebrew Congregation here in DC at the start of the Interfaith Council's Unity Walk, which they have every year up and down Mass Avenue, where all the embassies and all of the houses of worship of every
neighbor. It was very concerning. I didn't understand why. But
Devorah, I've muted everybody. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Thank
there we
you.
go. And we got lots of pictures for the Wildlife Act petition, for a picture petition. And of course, our Rosh Hashanah card project is going on, and we have a special card with a space for you to write in. I'm going to show it to you again at the end of the call. And if you would print it up and bring it to your shul during the high holidays, that would be a great opportunity. Particularly, well, you'd have to bring it on a day where they can write. And so during Sukkot would be good, or the days in between, not on Shabbat for many synagogues. So if you have a plan, a climate plan that you are thinking of doing over the high holidays or planning on doing over the holidays, and you'd like to write that into the chat to encourage us and give us ideas, that would be great. So we're at a real fulcrum here in the calendar. The Jewish year is ending and a new one is beginning, and the year of Shemitah is ending. And though Shemitah means a time of release from debts and release from enslavement and release from working the land, we're now releasing the year of Shemitah and getting back to the world of agriculture and borrowing and lending and consumption and the marketplace. But whether you study Shemitah in depth or let it pass you by or somewhere in between, how have you changed this year in your relationship to the earth? The month that we are just ending this week as we go into Rosh Hashanah is called Elul, E-L-U-L. And the rabbis say that that stands for Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, which is from the Song of Songs. It's said at weddings. And it means I am to my beloved as my beloved is to me. But we can translate that L to in L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. We can translate that L as not two, but four. So what would it be like if it was, I am for my beloved and my beloved is for me. And the beloved was the earth. I am for my beloved earth and the beloved earth is for me. And we can take a moment to think of all the gifts that we get from this planet, from this earth that we live on and reside on, abide on, and how fragile it is, and what gifts are we giving back rather than taking and taking and taking. So this would be a good time to take account of any changes in our behavior that we've had in this last Shemitah year, to take a cheshbon hanefesh, an account of our soul and our account of our earthling soul. What kind of earth citizen have we been? What kind of reciprocity and responsibility have we taken this year? So if you can take a few moments to think of something that may have changed for you this year, in the Shemitah year, as we've gone through 2.5 years of the pandemic, and we're not sure if it's winding down or not. And if you'd like to put that in the chat, that would be great as well. So the sound of the shofar that we're commanded to hear starting at the 1st of Elul and continuing through the holidays has many interpretations. But one thing's clear, hearing the shofar expresses what cannot be put into words. This week, I heard several people ask the question, when you blow the shofar, do you hear it differently? And I do, I blow shofar a little bit at high holidays. I have a nice big one like this. I haven't been practicing in Elul, which is not good. I've got to practice this week. But I hear it differently. It shakes my whole body when I am blowing it, as opposed to hearing somebody else do it. It shakes my whole body. It involves my lungs. And it can even sort of blow the top of my head off sometimes, particularly in Tekiah Gedola. You become one with the horn, blowing into the tiny end and having it amplified out the large end. And that is why we have a shofar on our logo, a big bright orange one, which we'll look at the end, to amplify our voice to a nearly deaf Congress. So the three calls, Tekiah, Shevarim, and Trua. One means, Tekiah can mean get your attention, wake up, sound an alarm. Shevarim is a kind of a cry, a crying out. And Trua, to me, is these 9 staccato blasts, and it's like getting ready for battle, going around and collecting what you need and getting ready to go into battle on a cause. In our work on climate, we felt all these 3 things. Sometimes something got our attention to climate and set off alarms for us. And we may have gone through a period of crying and grief at the immensity of the challenge, but we decided to act, to be climate activists, to engage the battle against those who want to maintain the status quo. I could have grabbed my shofar, but I decided I wanted you all to experience what being a shofar feels like. So let's practice the 3 calls. And I want you to sound the calls. So when we're on mute, I'll say Tekiah, which goes, ah, so do that. So sound like Tekiah. Ah, you can do it as loud as you want because we can't hear you. And so it means get their attention. Shevarim is 3 broken. ones. Ah. So let's do that together. Ah. I think it sounds like a European police car, crying out that there's an emergency, which there is. And trua is 9 blasts, staccato blasts. It goes, da, 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 da. Oh, I always lose track of how many I've done. Da, 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 da. So do that. Trua. Da, 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 da. Like you're gathering all your gear and courage to go forth. So now everybody, can you unmute everybody, Ed?
No, people have to unmute themselves.
Okay, unmute yourself and I'll call out the sounds and open wide and make a big loud noise. You might want to turn down your volume a little bit. You have to sing. Okay, I want you to get out your feelings from all the news that we have had this month about the work, about the future, and about the community with partners in this most important work. So let's go. Tekiah, Avarim, Rua. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll do Tekiah Gadola. Very good. All right. So you got something off of your chest, and we'll continue with our meeting. So thank you very much. I guess we have to. Am I muted?
No, you're okay.
So everybody mute back, and let me introduce our speaker for tonight. Oh, I'm sorry. First, I just wanted to go over a little bit of what we've been doing this week. But I don't have it on here. Oh, no, I already did that. I'm sorry. Okay, let me introduce our speaker tonight. Tonight, Eli Kasargod-Staub is from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a graduate of Wesleyan College in Connecticut, and he moved to DC, was it in 2004? Did I get that right? He's worked at the intersection of corporate governance and corporate accountability for his entire career, and he holds the Chartered Financial Analyst designation, CFA. Previously, he developed engagement strategy for 50/50 Climate Project and the Climate Majority Project, as well as led research and corporate governance initiatives at the Service Employees International Union. We all know it as the SEIU, and the Australian Council of Trade Unions. He now serves on the board of Bend the Arc, a Jewish Partnership for Justice, and he is now the co-founder and executive director of Majority Action, and he's going to tell us all about that. And the interesting thing is that he and his wife Kavitha have 2 children, and they now live in the house that my bubby bought in 1943 and that I grew up in, which is an amazing coincidence that there's somebody working on climate and Jewish in our house now, in my family's the mansion, as my husband says, the manse. So welcome very much, Eli. It's terrific to have you as a guest tonight.
Thank you. It is an incredible honor to be here. And from the moment we heard from Devorah about the lineage of this house, the yichus of this house, we were just floored. We feel like we've received such an incredible gift from you and your family, and it's such an honor to be able to try to carry it forward and make new memories and have more simchas in a house that undoubtedly saw its very full share of them.
Yeah, I'll have to bring over old pictures of you.
God, I would love that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Well, it is great to be with you all. I'm really thrilled to be here and thankful for the privilege of being in conversation and relationship with you all. I wanted to. I'll be speaking with you and just sharing with you a little bit about our work here at Majority Action, the perspective we bring to this work, and I'll be really trying to kind of start by laying a foundation here that helps us all enter into a conversation about what is often thought of and seen as a rather esoteric domain of influence, but really one that is available to and accessible to all of us. I hope to speak less and allow more time for questions. I will try to keep these remarks rather high level. I will happily nerd out on any level of technical specifics on any aspect of this with any of you, and so we'll really look forward to the conversation that follows my brief remarks here. We at Majority Action, we are a shareholder activism organization, and the reason I'm excited to speak with all of you is that as climate activists, you've really come to understand something very, very fundamental, which is that and every word that comes out of Devorah's mouth makes very clear. You guys understand that rising to the challenge of climate change isn't about the science, right? The science is settled. It's not about, do we have solutions? We have all of the solutions. We've got plans on plans on plans for what it will take to actually decarbonize our economy on scale, and with the swiftness that we need, and to transform our social systems as we do. All of you are here in this work because you fundamentally understand that rising to the challenge of climate change is about power. And it's about contesting for power in every domain where it is possible to use that power to shift the behavior of those whose complacency or whose self-interest has allowed the situation of accelerating and escalating climate change to persist and put the lives and livelihoods of so many at risk. Does that resonate? Does that feel right? So you guys know that this is the case about Congress. You know that the only way that we're actually going to get action out of Congress on any level of scale that we need is through accountability, is through that system of power, understanding that everyday people are going to hold it to the standard of the utter level of transformation of our energy system that we actually need to see. Climate activists are also very adept at taking a moment of real concern about climate change and realizing that you're going to have to develop all manner of skills and expertise about how to engage with systems and ecosystems of power that are not designed for your voice to actually come in and matter, right? There's a reason why we talk about the Schumer Manchin backroom deal, right? It's because that's the way that institution is set up, right? And so as activists, you have to then come in and learn, how do we actually move power through and around and at this system in order to be able to make and demand the change that we need to see? So I'm here today because the truth is that the ecosystem of money power is just another political ecosystem, like the ecosystem of Congress, like the ecosystem of your local public utility commission, like the ecosystem of your state legislature, like any of these ecosystems of power. The ecosystem of money power, and specifically the ecosystem of power with respect to publicly traded corporations, is very much the same. Now, it operates by a different logic with different players, with different centers of power. It doesn't function precisely the same as, say, Congress does. But the reality is that in addition to the halls of Congress, where Congress has the power to fundamentally rewrite the rules of the economy, rewrite the rules of our energy system, there is an entire other ecosystem inside the domain of money power that also has the power to rewrite the rules of what constitutes acceptable behavior and how we need to be transforming our economy. And I'm talking, of course, here as representative of our organization about the ecosystem of shareholder power, or in its more technical term, the ecosystem of what's called corporate governance. So the ecosystem of corporate governance is the ecosystem that runs from corporations, particularly publicly traded corporations like Exxon or Duke Energy or JP Morgan Chase on one end, all the way through to the giant money managers that hold stock in those corporations, firms you've heard of like Vanguard or Fidelity, State Street or BlackRock. These are money managers that manage money on behalf of millions upon millions of people as workers, as retirees, as in communities, and then frankly all the way then on down to to everyday people who are engaged in the system. Some of the people are direct shareholders in corporations. From the population perspective, that's a rather small percentage, but lots of people are proximate to this system of power, right? They might have a 401k at their workplace. Their shul might have some investment savings, or if their shul doesn't have a lot of investment savings, certainly their shul is part of networks who do. I see folks are putting questions. I have to say, I'm not going to be able to see questions as we're going. And so I will definitely look at questions as we get to the end. I just want
Yeah, no, you keep going. They're just writing them down so they don't forget them.
That's fantastic. I just wanted to acknowledge
We'll
that
get to them when, yeah.
I can't receive it and
No.
Okay, cool. So this ecosystem of power, this ecosystem of corporate governance, is an ecosystem that has the power to fundamentally reshape the rules of what it is that corporations are held to, the standards that corporations are held to with respect to decarbonization. This is an ecosystem that has within it the ability to set very clear standards of what constitutes acceptable behavior and enforce them at corporate boards of directors. And if Congress can do that through passing legislation, right, then which is basically effectively Congress's fundamental powers, passing legislation and spending money, allocating the spending of money. The currency, if you will, of the ecosystem of shareholder power is votes. And these are specifically votes. The most powerful form of votes that shareholders have is on corporate board of director elections. So nearly every publicly traded corporation in the country puts up a set of nominees for board of directors every single year. And every single year, shareholders have the opportunity to vote those members up or down, individually or collectively. And they have the power also to put forward their own candidates for board of directors to be able to say, hey, in a moment where they say, hey, this corporation is not doing what we think they need to be doing, we need them to be doing something different. This is an ecosystem. The ecosystem of corporate governance has the power to go to every systemically important climate emitter, greenhouse gas emitter in the country, and say to them, look, either you get with the program of realigning your business strategy, your targets, your political spending activity to what's going to be necessary to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, or we can replace you with directors who will. Let me say that again. This ecosystem collectively, shareholders have the power to go to every systemically important emitter and say, either you get with the program and realign your business strategy, which means your capital spending, your investment plans, et cetera, your political influence activity, your lobbying, your trade associations, your targets, the way you pay your executives, everything. Either you realign all of that to the goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees, or we can oust your leadership and replace you with people who will. Majority Action's mission is to work to unlock that collective power of shareholders to do exactly that. Now, shareholders have been engaged on issues of climate change for decades. They have been trying to engage individually with companies, shareholders, and by shareholders, I mean both everyday, like individual investors who might hold 5 shares of stock at a company, all the way up to the largest institutional investors in the world, have been attempting to engage with companies for decades, trying to have dialogue around what does decarbonization need to look like, trying to have trying to engage those companies to have them disclose what their strategies might look like in a world that realigns to one that limits warming. They've tried to engage with companies to disclose their political spending. There's been a tremendous amount of effort, so much so that there's literally now the biggest investor coalition in the world is a $70 trillion investor coalition, representing nearly half of the assets that exist in the world, that are organized to engage corporations on this very necessary and urgent climate transition. But thus far, the ecosystem of shareholder power has not been actually bringing the level of power to bear that they actually have. They've been leaving the strongest power they have, which is their power to not just sit down with the company, not just buy and sell that company's shares, not just even file a resolution at a company suggesting that a company do something, but their power to fire and hire boards of directors. The ecosystem collectively has been leaving that power on the table. And some of that is because we are in a situation in this ecosystem where, in this ecosystem of corporate governance, where we have a concentration of power in this ecosystem of corporate governance that is literally unprecedented in the history of capitalism. Never before in the entirety of the history of what could be called capitalism has the level of power over corporate boards been concentrated in the hands of so few institutional investors. Just 3 asset managers, BlackRock, Fidelity, and State Street, control more than 25% of the shares that are voted at nearly every publicly traded corporation that matters. And so if we begin from thinking about this ecosystem as an ecosystem of power, we have to really think about, well, what does it mean to actually shift that power and create the conditions in which those largest players are using that power to actually move the needle on what matters most. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen for just a few moments to just share some of the highlights of what does it mean for us to bring this work into practice. So can everybody see this?
Yes.
Here? Yes? Okay.
Yep.
So at Majority Action, our theory of change rests on moving power in 3 different kind of dimensions simultaneously. We work to organize those investors who can and should be positioned to be leaders, to link this voting power that they have over boards of directors directly to corporate climate performance. We've organized over $8 trillion in assets under management to adopt shareholder voting policies that say exactly that if a board of directors is failing to align to a 1.5 degree trajectory, that they have the power and will use it to vote out that board, to cast their votes toward voting out that board of directors. And literally just today, we learned that the largest pension fund in the world, the Norwegian pension fund, has taken up this exact mantle as well. It's a huge breakthrough. It happened maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. Does anybody else have trouble keeping track of the days these days? Anyway, it was either yesterday or today this happened. The second is driving campaigns that really hold these largest asset managers and other key power brokers in our ecosystem accountable to that standard. This ecosystem of shareholder power is just like any other in the sense that, you know how it is moving power in Congress. You have to take an idea that's seemingly impossible. First, you have to find some champions, right? And then they step out with it. And then all of a sudden they're stepping out with it, makes it so that everybody else has to decide which side they're on. So when AOC steps out and says, okay, our party is going to have a conversation about the Green New Deal, all of a sudden it moves the needle, right? In terms of the conversation of what's possible, right? And you don't get the Inflation Reduction Act without AOC having done that work to really open the window of the conversation. So that's what this first part is about, is really opening that window of conversation. The second is leveraging all manner of power that we can to shine a light on how these largest asset managers are using their shareholder voting power and hold them accountable to doing it better. the people who are in leadership at these largest fund managers, BlackRock, Fidelity, Vanguard, State Street, are among the group of people, the group of human beings in the world where like, it's a set of like 10 to 20 people who could wake up tomorrow and decide that corporate action on climate change would be different, and it would be different, right? There's a group of people who could wake up and it would be different. And then the third, and this part is absolutely essential, is that once again, political system like any other, this whole ecosystem of power is not just something that exists in its own whole cloistered way. It exists as part of our broader culture. It responds to public demand. It responds to things like climate strikes. It responds to moments where people are directly holding leaders in the ecosystem of shareholder power accountable to be doing what they need to be doing. Most people are not major shareholders of publicly traded corporations, but nearly everyone in this country is proximate to some node of power in this ecosystem. Like I was saying, maybe you're at a shul that uses one of these fund managers, or the pension fund for your rabbis does, right? Maybe you're at a workplace that has a 401k or a 403b. Doesn't matter if you've only got $500 in it, they're voting your shares and the shares of everybody else in that fund, right? And you have a way to demand that. You're a resident of a city or a state, right? Where there are hundreds of billions of dollars often in funds that are being invested in your name with shares that are being voted in your name, right? And so there are all manner of opportunity for climate activists to make their power felt in this seemingly esoteric ecosystem that speaks its whole own language. That language, I just want to hasten to say, is a language of money. And the truth is that for many climate activists, that can feel a little uncomfortable. But the hard reality is that even the largest financial regulators in the world, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, came out and said, our financial system cannot survive year after year of climactic shock. It's not built for that, right? And so climate activists are on the firmest possible ground in challenging this ecosystem to use every ounce of its power for the transformational change that we need, because every aspect of our financial system depends on it. So just two quick slides I want to share. One is a little bit of what does it look like, our tactics in action. So we actually, going back, we do a lot of different things. We organize investors, we publish investigative research, we do campaign partnerships with grassroots partners, we have a whole strategic communications operation, and they allow us to pull off tactics like this. We release reports about how asset managers are using their proxy voting power, and then we work with powerful stakeholders, whether they're pension funds who are clients of those asset managers, or Senate Democrats, right, to go to those asset managers and say, you're not living up to your responsibility. We leverage our research capacity to drive interventions in critical moments. We don't only work on climate change; we work on issues of racial justice, just as with equal resource and vigor and dedication. And this is illustrating some of that work as well, about work we've done to bring together leaders in ways that really shift the standards of expectations. And some of the wins we've had along the way, we're looking for big transformational change. We all know we need to keep winning as we go. We, together with some of our grassroots climate partners, led a campaign that led to Lee Raymond, who was the architect of Exxon, who was the chair and CEO of ExxonMobil. He was the architect of Exxon's climate denial strategy. And he until very recently, he was the lead director on the board of JP Morgan Chase, which is the largest fossil fuel financer in the world. We led a campaign that organized investors and grassroots activists to say, it's 2020, that is wildly inappropriate. We cannot have climate deniers on corporate boards anywhere anymore, let alone those in charge of directing so much money towards fossil fuel expansion. And we won. We ousted Lee Raymond from the board of from the board of JP Morgan Chase. He was not planning to step down that year, and we shifted everything about how that board responded. We've also targeted and successfully ousted other directors. One of the longest serving directors at Duke Energy, the largest and one of the dirtiest electric power companies in the country, had on its board of directors someone who is a climate denial, someone with a history of climate denial, someone with a history of overt racism, and somebody who was involved in election denial work. Our campaigning led to his ouster as well. And the work that we've done to shift how those largest asset managers are responding, they were just ignoring climate change a few years ago, really, has led to some key breakthroughs, including the insurgent victory at ExxonMobil last year, an incomplete victory, but a big breakthrough all at once. We've all lived that dynamic of breakthroughs, of victories that are simultaneously massive and not enough. And, that's how it works in our space too. Oh, that's not what I wanted to show. This is what I wanted to show. This is my very last slide. I wanted to just show this very last slide, which is holding up two of the grassroots partner organizations that we work really closely with, that if any of you are sitting here asking like, well, okay, this seems cool, but I don't really know how I as a person or with another group of people would be able to get engaged in this work. We at Majority Action are a shareholder organizing organization, right? We move investor power in this way. And we work really closely with a set of grassroots partners that channel people power into this ecosystem. And two of them are the Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition, which works on issues of shareholder voting power and many other issues as well, organizing everyday people to challenge banks on their fossil fuel financing and challenge asset managers on how they're using both their investment power and their voting power. And then we also work really closely with a wonderful organization based out of Boston called Climate Finance Action, which actually organizes everyday people in states around the country to go to their city treasurers, their state treasurers, other elected fiduciaries, people who are elected officials and are in charge of big pots of money, and engage with them about how they're using their shareholder voting power and other aspects of their money power towards climate transformation. And they working together, when I was talking about that 8 trillion, they working together, we have moved some of those earliest adopter investors into being the kind of leaders that we've needed to see, who in turn can then, by virtue of their taking up that position, help lead and move the entire ecosystem. So I'll stop there. I'm again really thrilled to be here with all of you, and look forward to digging into questions.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. A lot of information, but well, you laid it out pretty strongly and clearly. So let's give Bob Schloss had this question. Do you think we need to change corporation charter law in the state of Delaware to truly change responsibilities of corporate governance? Or do you think we can only try to elect a few of our own board members and get a few resolutions passed at annual meetings of stockholders? Maybe you answered that more during the talk.
I would love to respond to it, because it's one of my most favorite questions.
Oh, good.
Because
thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I want to address the very last part of it first. We unequivocally think that getting a few resolutions passed at annual meetings of stockholders is unequivocally not enough. Nor do we think that only trying to get a few board members elected is enough. We do know that when the largest players in this ecosystem set standards of what they expect, corporate boards jump to meet them, right? Mm-hmm. And we have seen those shifts in power on many issues in multiple rounds, and we have already seen it here, and there is so much more room to run. But my most favorite part of this question is on this first part. Do we need to change corporation law in the state of Delaware? Yes, unequivocally, we need to change corporation law in the state of Delaware and across the country. We could be rewriting corporate law in this country to make corporations legally accountable to communities and the climate, right? We also need to rewrite our constitution in this country to make it that we actually have like one person, one vote in this country, right? And that we don't have structural gerrymandering, and we don't have situations where you have like the state of Michigan, where you have a majority of people voting for one party and more people from the other party getting sent to Congress. And we need to do those things. And none of that stops any of you from showing up in a fight around Congress today. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? So what we believe is a both and, just like you do, which is to say, you know that we need fundamental change in our political system in this country. And that doesn't stop you from beating down the doors in the halls of this Congress to demand that they use the power that they do have and the people who are there to do it responsibly. We need to change corporate law in this country. And there is so much more that shareholder power can currently exercise that it's not currently doing. And so we believe that we need to and have the opportunity to push the boundaries of that as far as we possibly can, even as people, really smart people, are trying to work through, what would those kind of broader legal changes actually look like. So it's very much a both and in our perspective.
Great.
Changing to, as just saw Bob's comment, changing, and again, we'll go as nerdy as we want to, changing corporation law to allow for the creation of B Corps is absolutely fantastic. And it is not the same as requiring all corporations to be B Corps, which would require all manner of legal change. And so what I'm talking about is, as I was saying, as much about how do we leverage all of the power in front of us today, while we are also demanding even further transformational change through other kinds of legal channels.
Great. Let me take a question from Mark Papier. Did I pronounce that right, Mark?
You did. You did. Thank you. So
this was our speaker last month.
I had so much fun speaking last month. I came back just to hear other people now. So thank you. Eli, thanks for being here. This is really interesting and just awesome in general. And I'm not sure I fully formed this question. It might just be kind of, let me hear your thoughts at the end of this. So I work for a large telecommunication company, and I've seen the good from what you and what others are doing as a kind of a volunteer from the inside in their ESG work. In that they, in part of lunch and learns I've given and stuff, there's key lines that say things like, the shareholders demand this, and the people that hold the stocks demand this, and so and the consumers demand this, so we have to be good for the environment because it makes money sense. So like your efforts are there and working. And then starting maybe last week or something, it feels like the news cycle completely shifted over to the other side. That Business Roundtable changed their tone completely and said, forget about ESG and just focus on making money and for hiring people. You have very influential people like Elon Musk, who is effectively against ESG, and who could blame him when Exxon stays in the sustainability funds and Tesla isn't in the sustainability funds? Like, it just doesn't pass the smell test. It doesn't make any sense to normal people why that might occur. And then this week, Vivek, Ramaswamy, like in true anti-ESG, is out there saying, targeting companies like Disney and Apple and big people that were leading the charge and keeping America in the Paris Accord, framework, even when we weren't part of the agreement anymore. It was companies that were kind of leading the charge. It doesn't feel like we have the momentum anymore. Does it feel that way to you? Where do we go from here? Again, that's where the question gets a little bit fuzzy. I'm not sure what to do with all that.
I'm with you. I totally get what you're saying. Should I? She's ESG, environment and social governance. So basically what this is largely talking about, but from the inside instead of the outside.
Okay.
So you know the dictum: first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Right? So we're living that right now, and it's extraordinary. So our ecosystem, and we are proud of our contribution to this. We are by far not the only ones who have helped make this happen, but our ecosystem in the last couple of years has finally, particularly on climate change and on racial justice, started to do things that really matter in terms of not just calling on corporations to issue disclosures for, say, how they think about climate risk to themselves, but actually making real demands about companies to transform their business strategies in line with a Paris-aligned trajectory. And our ecosystem has therefore finally earned the right to the political backlash that we are now experiencing. That's the way that we at Majority Action hold this. And so we take the entire organized backlash, and it is literally organized by, when I say the same people, it is literally the same individual human beings who organized the manufactured anti-CRT, critical race theory backlash, right? It is the same human beings following literally the same playbook as was used there, where they make wild, outlandish claims and then try to trigger our side into coming up all nice and knowledgeable and saying like, well, actually, like CRT is just a comfortable college theory, right? Actually, ESG is just a way for, right? And as soon as we go there, right, then they've won and we've lost, right? Because they're having a conversation about the future of the economy and speaking to their base, and we're having a wonky esoteric conversation. Our side is starting to respond, and where we see the path forward and where we are getting information with key allies is really helping us not just fight back, but fight forward to say, okay, like you're calling the question about whether or not corporations should be addressing climate change and systemic racism, like bring it on, because there is an economy on the other side of this that works better for all of us. And it works better for investors, and it works better for consumers, and it works better for employees. It works better for everyone, right? And we will have that debate any day of the week. So we're doing our part to work to get our ecosystem engaged, to not just try to push back, but to actually reclaim the momentum by fighting forward and saying, no, there is an economy out there that is worth fighting for, and you are but a road bump on the way to get there. Truly tremendous question.
Great. Yeah, great answer. Someone asked about, do you think this with the Supreme Court as conservative as it is that going to get in the way, or this is out?
They're going to get in the way of everything every one of us cares about in every possible dimension of all of our lives.
Right.
And there is, I think all of us know and understand that on every single issue, every single one of us cares about, that the Supreme Court is going to be against everything we have stood for the last 100 years or more. And the Supreme Court is going to participate in throwing up every possible obstacle and roadblock. It's also the case that none of us can conduct our strategies solely in anticipation of being smacked down by the Supreme Court, because there's nothing worth doing that the Supreme Court is not going to take issue with at the end of the day. So yeah, of course it's a threat. It's a threat to everything you're doing in Congress. It's a threat to everything we're doing. And we got to keep pushing forward.
A lot of discussion and questions in the chat, really good questions.
Yes, I see that. I utterly neglected to mention Dayenu. That was 100% my fault. I'm so glad, Joelle, that you brought Dayenu up. Dayenu has been, the reason it was oversight on my part only because Dayenu is a part of things like the Stop the Money Pipeline Coalition, right? And there are many, many, many groups in that. And I was literally just speaking like from my organizational perspective of like, who do we show up talking to? But if you're somebody who's trying to think about like, I'm a grassroots activist, how do I plug into this kind of work? Particularly as a Jewish grassroots activist, Dayenu has been doing tremendous work organizing a Jewish voice and a Jewish presence in these debates about money power, and doing so not just through purchasing but through actually like putting feet on the street. Part of what transformed BlackRock's behavior was not just when we were challenging them in investor conferences, although we were, not just when major pension funds were firing them over their climate failures, although they were, but also when grandmothers in the UK started gluing themselves to the offices of BlackRock over its utter climate failures, right? And the combination of all those factors really shifted their behavior. And Dayenu is playing a tremendous role channeling Jewish energy into precisely these fights around both big banks and big asset managers.
Maury Edelman from California asks, how did you of California retirement system decide to stop investing in funds related to fossil fuels? Was there an investor movement?
Can you say that one more time? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah. How did University of California retirement system decide to stop investing in funds related to fossil fuels? You may not know this. Was there an investor movement like what you're talking about?
So there has been tremendous, wonderful energy around fossil fuel divestment that has largely been driven by grassroots stakeholders and then taken up by some investors as an approach to all of this. Fossil fuel divestment is an approach of saying we have a fund that has holdings of fossil fuels, and we should divest ourselves. We should get rid of those holdings. There are a couple of strategic theories that underpin that work. One aspect of that theory is that institutions divesting themselves of fossil fuels sends a powerful public and moral sanction and closes the zone of what's seen as acceptable behavior from companies. And then the second theory is that it shifts capital costs, or it has the potential to shift capital costs, borrowing costs, and other kind of financing costs for corporations. There's clearly evidence that both of those things are true. And it's also true that when that different kinds of fossil fuel divestment have very different kinds of impact. So when a bank decides it's going to stop lending to fossil fuel corporations, it has massive impact, because if they stop lending money for fossil fuel expansion, those fossil fuel companies can't undertake that expansion anymore. If I own shares in Chevron and I sell those shares to Devorah, I have divested myself of my Chevron shares, and Chevron doesn't take any notice of that transaction because we've just engaged in a transaction in the secondary market. And so there are how do I say this? We are in a zone where there is absolutely a multiplicity of strategies that are powerful and needed. And even if a system like University of California has sold off its fossil fuel production assets, that doesn't mean that that is the limit of the shareholder power they can be using. They still hold shares in electric power corporations. They should be going and demanding that every one of them decarbonize immediately. They still hold shares in all of the banks that are lending money to fossil fuel corporations. They have the power to go and demand that their boards knock it off or else. So this question of, I'm reacting a little bit because there's been a longstanding debate about divestment versus engagement, which we at Majority Action just see as like, it's not the most powerful version of the conversation we can be having. We want to have a conversation about how do we strategically attack all of the different components of this problem and bring the biggest amount of power to bear on all of the different dimensions of the money power problem that we can, some of which is about moving money and some of which is about using ownership power, and often is about using them in tandem with each other.
Well, I'm going to have to let that be the last passionate statement of the evening, because we really try to end at 9 o'clock. And I have a couple things to say at the end. But Eli, this was great. Thank you so much for coming. I know how active and busy you've been lately. And I'm going to let Joelle Novi, since you know each other, I'm going to let her follow up on her questions. She's got quite a few questions there. So, and Bob Schloss, also, you two should have coffee. So there you go. Thank you so much. That was incredibly powerful and passionate, the work that you're doing. And we wish you all the best in this, in parallel with what we're doing on Capitol Hill. I mean, it's really interesting, the parallels. So thank you very much. And maybe like Mark Papier, you'll come to another meeting.
I just want, if I might just say, I would be more than happy to continue this conversation with any of you individually or in group. These
Okay, you want to
questions,
put your email in the chat?
yeah, let me do that. And
email in the
I just
chat.
want to say that the questions Joelle is asking about, what is the theory of change of what moves these very largest asset owners is the question that, and asset managers is the question that we live and breathe every day, and we could not be more excited to be in that conversation with you all. And let me just close my last thing by saying your people power on this matters. When people send letters to asset managers, it matters. When people protest at asset managers or at asset owners like pension funds, they take notice. The people power 100% matters here, and look forward to building more of it with you.
Great. Yeah, people are asking about moving money and all that kind of thing. Maybe we need, well, we've had sessions on credit cards and moving money and divesting, but we need more of them. All right, well, yeah.
I was just going to say, I was just in another
Who's
meeting with Scott Lewis has started an organization called Religious Institutes for Climate Justice. And Bill McKibben has done a 4-minute video for Rosh Hashanah. And you could get that from Scott because Scott got the video information. So, because Third Act is doing a lot of this similar kinds of activities.
Great. Are you in Florida? You're in Florida?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, terrific. Thanks for coming
Okay.
tonight. That's great. Thank you all for coming tonight. This has been a terrific discussion and a great conversation. And I thank Eli Kasargod-Staub for a wonderful presentation and conversation. So I wanted to just show you all our Rosh Hashanah card. Ed, can you put that up on the screen? I don't know if you've, many of you have seen it, many of you are using it, but we have made, this is under our action alerts on our website. And the website's simply jewishearthalliance.org, very simple website. And you can print these out. You can make copies and take them to shul with you in the sukkah and have people write to their representatives. So it wishes them a happy new year and it encourages them to be courageous. Hold on, Ed, wait. So then there's a space in the middle. I'd encourage them to continue to support things as bold as the Inflation Reduction Act and keep going with that. And then there's space for you to provide a personal story and your Jewish connection to the whole why you're a climate activist. So that's our project for the high holidays. And October, we're not having our meeting on the third Tuesday next month because it's Sukkot. It's Simchat Torah. And we're having it the following week on the 25th. And we are working with Dianu on phone banking because, of course, the midterm is coming up really soon. And it'll be really, that will be the last couple of weeks from October 25th. So look for that in the newsletter. And if any of you who are here for the first time and want our newsletter and want to sign up, if you go to our website, you can sign up. There's a form to just sign your name and email, and we'll get back to you with our newsletter. And we don't send out a million things to annoy you. So our, as I said at the beginning, our logo says it all with its bright orange shofar. We start with individuals at the tiny end of the shofar, the little end, and we amplify it out the big end. Together in community, we amplify our Jewish voice and our opinions and our demands. We ask people to wake up to what is happening. Thank you for your continued efforts, your persistence, and your courage. May this new year of 5,783 bring more success in our work and satisfaction that we are fighting for the future. And let me end with a blessing to you all. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shenatan lanu hizdamnut litaken et haolam. Blessed are you, creator of the universe, for giving us this opportunity, for being on earth at this time to mend the world. It's a big responsibility, but it gives great meaning to our lives. Thank you all. How about if we say a big Tekiah Gadola? Everybody unmute. Tekiah Gadola. Woo, this is a Okay, there you go. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes,
Shana Tova.